What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for joining me today. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Leica M6. So I've had the Leica M6 for about 6 months now. I've shot about 40 rolls of film through it, and I feel like I know the ins and outs of the camera enough to talk about it with you guys and tell you guys how I feel about it. Before I start, I want to tell you guys about a little something special I've got planned for this video. I want to take you guys along on a trip that we took to Monterey, California. We shot some video, and all I brought in terms of camera gear on that trip is the Leica M6 and 5 rolls of Portra. And this little point and shoot that I'm filming this video on. But in terms of just still photos, the only thing I used was the Leica M6 and the 5 rolls of Kodak Portra. So before we do that, I want to do a little quick overview of this camera. First and foremost, it's super solid. It's super beefy. I would not characterize it as compact or light. In fact, here it is compared to a Nikon FM2. And you can see that the shoulder heights of the M6 versus the FM2, the shoulder height on the M6 is actually, it's a little taller. I mean, its profile is going to be much slimmer. Yes, it's compact in that regard, but they're comparably weighty. And they both feel very solid. In fact, I've got a scale right here. I wanted to actually weigh these. I'm going to do the M6 just lens only on this scale. That's weighing in at 1 pound 6.2 ounces, so 162. And the FM2, let's check out the FM2's weight. And we're going to take off the lens. This is the FM2, body only, no lens, no film. 1 pound 4.2 ounces. So, God, is that right? Is the M6 actually heavier than the Nikon FM2? And it is. The M6 is actually heavier. Now, this is body only. Granted, SLR lenses tend to be heavier, which they are. I mean, this lens from the Nikon versus the lens from the M6. Big difference there. So, but I think that's just kind of an interesting thing, that the body of the M6 versus the body of an SLR, which people characterize as big and heavy, versus the Leica, which people characterize as small and discreet, is the M6 is actually a little tiny bit heavier. And I wanted to talk about that, actually. I don't buy into the whole, Leicas are more discreet and kind of grant you some kind of invisibility power. A black box up to your face is a black box up to your face. Like I said, people tend to characterize Leicas as smaller, but, they don't make you like a ninja or anything like that. So, like I said, black box to your face, black box to your face. So not a real big difference. And I know there are people that will argue that point to the day they die. I just don't buy into it. With that being said, I absolutely prefer a rangefinder over an SLR, and there's a few reasons why. One is the form factor. Yes, it does have that slimmer profile. It's a little bit more weight balanced. SLRs tend, when you hang them from your neck, and that's how I tend to carry a camera, I just hang it from my neck. They tend to tip forward a little bit because they're kind of front heavy they tend to be front heavy because of their lenses. This is a little bit more balanced when it's hanging from your neck, and it just feels a little bit better. Really just a matter of preference. Not a huge deal breaker, but that's one of the reasons. Rangefinders don't have viewfinder blackout, and let me explain what that means. With an SLR, I'll show you actually. With an SLR, you've got a mirror, this assembly where the mirror opens up, the shutter opens, and then when the shutter closes, the mirror slaps back into place. So, it happens much faster than that. Here it is at a 60th of a second. And you don't have that with a rangefinder. And the reason the viewfinder blacks out is because that mirror blocks the prism. So it blocks your view for that split second. That doesn't happen with a rangefinder. And the reason I like that is it keeps me engaged with the scene. It keeps me connected with the scene. It might help me to anticipate my next shot if there's movement. And that is not a thing that that's not a thing where you shoot a rangefinder for the first time and you go, "Oh my God, that's amazing." It just kind of tends to work its way into the way you see things and the way you shoot, and you know, it kind of takes its time. But after some time, I've grown to prefer it. Another thing that I like about rangefinders is that you can see outside of the frame. So for example, you've got your 35mm frame lines, but you can see what's going on outside of the frame. So if there's something coming into your frame, you can kind of anticipate that action, which can really be helpful when you're anticipating a shot. If you've got a subject that's moving into a scene or whatever, it helps you to see that. Yet another thing that does not that kind of takes time to develop an appreciation for. It's not something that you know, it's not something that I even recognized right away. I think I shot with rangefinders for a couple of years before I even grew to appreciate that fact. There is that. The other thing too is noise, because an SLR has that mirror assembly that flips up and down. It is a little louder because there's more stuff happening, basically. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. Versus a rangefinder where it's just the shutter opening and there's no mirror moving up and down. So it's a little quieter. You know, the FM2 is by no means a loud camera. It's just a little louder than the Leica M6. A lot of people will say it's much louder, but I guess that's really subjective. Well, not if you record it, you know, and kind of measure it by decibels or whatever, but I'm just kind of going by my subjective hearing. It's a little louder, but by no means is an FM2 a loud camera. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the features of this camera. So you've got your top plate, which is really simple. You know, one of the things that I love about this camera is that it's not a complex camera. It's actually a very simple camera with very few features, and I think that's part of the magic, is that it just works well. It doesn't have any more than it really needs. So anyway, let's take a look at the top plate. This is the film rewind knob. You can kind of see that it's slanted at an angle there. I don't really understand why they made that choice, but whatever. It's there. That's how it is. Pretty standard knob. When you're at the end of the roll, you flip this little rewind switch right here so that the sprocket on this end will loosen, and then you can rewind your film back into the cassette. You've got your hot shoe, and by the way, this is a Leica M6 TTL. One quick point about the Leica M6 Classic and the Leica M6 TTL is that they both have TTL metering. The TTL version is TTL flash capable. So if you've got a TTL flash, this is compatible with TTL flashes, like, for example, the Leica SF20. So all Leica M6s have TTL metering. It's just that the TTL version, the Leica M6 TTL, is TTL flash capable. Moving on from that, so you've got your hot shoe, you've got your shutter speed dial. Another thing between the M6 and the M6 Classic and the M6 TTL is that the dials on TTLs are larger, and they go in opposite directions. So on a TTL, if you're looking through the meter, if you're looking at the arrows, the shutter speed dial, you move the shutter speed dial in the direction that the arrow is pointing. So I feel that that's a little bit more intuitive. It's the opposite way of a lot of classic cameras. I think that it's opposite from this FM2. But after getting used to it, I really prefer that direction that it's in. Again, just kind of another preference. Also, the dial's larger, so I think it's a little harder, or excuse me, it's a little easier to handle when you're changing your shutter speeds. You've got your shutter button there. I've got this shutter release, this soft release, is by a company called The More Gooder. I'll link them below, but they're super cool. They make his name is Caleb. He makes shutter releases from recycled skateboard ply. So it's recycled material, and he uses old broken skateboards, and it's super cool. I really recommend that you check that out. I like the shutter releases just because I think it feels a little better. It has your classic threaded release there. It's got a film counter on the top panel that is super easy to read. It's round, and it's just, yeah, there it is. It's super easy to read. I like it. It's black type on silver, and it's nice to read. You've got your strap lugs on either side. I've got some leather strap from some company, I think Artisan and Artist. I got this on eBay like a few years ago, and I got it for like a super good deal. So and it feels good. It's like super soft leather. This is my old standby, really. On the back here, you've got your viewfinder window. You've got your flash sync port there, and then you've got this ISO selection dial. So you actually select your ISO on this. You press this little button, and then you can change your ISO by spinning that dial and pointing it to the ISO of the film that you load. On the front here, this is your battery compartment. So your battery compartment is in front. It takes two, either like the LR44s, the alkaline LR44s, or the SR44s, the silver oxide. I like using the silver oxides because I feel like they last a lot longer. So I really prefer those. This button is your lens release. So you push that. You could twist the lens off. This knob, or this dial, what is that, a knob, a dial, switch? That's your viewfinder selector. So you can kind of preview the scene when you're looking through the viewfinder. I've got a 35mm lens on here. When you mount a 35mm lens, it automatically chooses 35mm frame lines. Same with like a 50 and I believe a 90. But you can preview other frame lines with this switch here. So you can see what those frame lines look like without having to put other lenses on by switching this frame line selector here. Got on the bottom. Okay, so on the bottom is this. I guess this. I don't know. I don't know what to call this thing, but this is. I want to go into the loading mechanism of this camera. And this was, when I first got this camera, and before I got this camera, this was my biggest gripe with the M6, is the loading mechanism. And the reason for that is because I felt like it was needlessly complex. I've grown to not hate it. I used to really dislike the loading mechanism, but basically what you do is you've got this tab here, let's call it a tab. You spin that, and that plate comes off. So there's a piece that you can drop and lose, like down a gutter or whatever, if you're not careful. So, you know, you might want to like put that in your pocket. You want to be super careful when you're handling this, because I'm sure that buying another one of these requires like a kidney or something, because it's a Leica and Leicas are expensive. So anyway, you take that off, that opens up, and that flips open. So that back flips open. And I'm going to load a sample roll in here just to show you guys how this works. So you put your cassette in that side there. You pull the leader across. And there's, like, in this side, you probably can't see it, but there's kind of this three-pronged claw. And you put the leader inside that claw. And what you want to do, what you really, really, really want to be careful with, because I made this mistake, I think, on my second roll that I shot through this thing, is that you kind of tend to want to center the film in this kind of window here. But what you want to do is you want to make sure it's all the way, I guess, you know, this direction being up on the camera, because this is the top of the camera. You want to make sure it's all the way up, because you've got to line up the sprockets on this gear over here with the sprocket holes in the film. So you want to make sure those are lined up. If the sprockets are not lined up with the sprocket holes on the film will not take up. I made that mistake on my second roll of film. There are people that say you cannot misload an M6. Well, I'm that guy that misloaded an M6. Sorry. So, so you want to make sure you don't center the film in the window like that. You want to make sure it's all the way lined up to the top, and that the sprockets on this gear are lined up with the sprocket holes on your film. You close that. You put this thing back on. You twist that tab, and you're loaded up. So you want to go ahead and advance that. And you know you're loaded correctly because this thing will spin when you advance the film. Okay? All right, so now I have successfully loaded my Leica M6. Now, like I said in the beginning, I hated that loading mechanism. I really disliked it. Now, I'm at a point where I don't mind it. I still don't like that there's a piece that can come off and that you can lose. That really scares me because I would hate to have to buy one of these things because I know for a fact it's going to be expensive. You know, that's really all there is to it. Oh, also this lens, you know, a lens on a rangefinder, you just like any manual camera, you adjust the aperture on the camera. This lens has a lens tab, so I like to, you know, kind of focus with my index finger there. Like I said, it's a simple camera. That's really all there is to it. The meter on this thing, let's talk about the meter on this thing. It does not have like an average or like a, it's not even really center weighted. It's like a, and it's not quite spot. It's kind of in between center weighted and spot. So, so it's a little bigger. It's kind of, you know, it encompasses maybe, I'd say, that much of the frame. It doesn't average an entire scene, but it's not as small as a spot. So know that when you're metering with this thing. I think Leica has a name for it, like center spot or something like that. I don't know. I think I'm wrong in what that's called, but know that it's, you know, it's smaller than a center weighted meter, but it's larger than a spot meter. It's kind of in between the two. So, but the meter is accurate. I really like the meter. I've grown kind of accustomed to, you know, being able to meter a scene, especially since I mostly shoot color negative and a little bit of black and white. Having kind of like a semi-spot kind of center weighted meter. I've gotten used to it, and I really like the meter on this thing. I've found it to be very reliable and very accurate. Let's talk about the advance lever on this thing. I thought this was a, when I first got an M6, I thought there was something wrong with it. I thought it maybe needed tightening, but the advance lever has a little, the tip kind of flips out there. So let me show you what I'm talking about. That tip kind of flips out to help your thumb catch it, and then you advance it. And then it just kind of, you know, when it flips back, it kind of flips back on its own weight. I thought that it was loose and it needed tightening, but that is a feature. I could take it or leave it. I could, you know, if this was kind of just one solid piece, or if it was just kind of rigid instead of kind of flipping out like that. Let's see if you can kind of see that. Yeah, there we go. I know the autofocus is trying to take my face, but you can kind of see that feature there. So that's what I'm talking about. That feature, I could take it or leave it. I don't love it really, but you know, it's there. Okay, so now that we've gone through the features of the camera, and like I said, it's a very simple camera, it does its job really well. I can honestly say that I love this camera. Like I mentioned earlier, I really prefer rangefinders, and you know, this I believe is as fine a rangefinder as you can make. I mean, it's engineered really well. Obviously, it's not cheaply built. I feel like it's reliable. I mean, you know, the Leica M line has proved itself time and time again for decades. There are people that will argue that the M3 is the best Leica M ever made. I won't argue that, but you know, I'd like to have a meter in my camera. The M3 does not have a meter. I do shoot Sunny 16 sometimes just to keep sharp and kind of for fun, but I like having a meter because I shoot in just kind of wildly varying scenes from indoors to outdoors to, you know, whatever. So, you know, I love this camera. I did not take lightly the decision to buy this camera because it is an expensive camera. You know, I bought and sold a lot of gear leading up to this. You know, anybody who's seen this channel or knows me on social media knows that, like, I find a lot of cameras at thrift stores. I trade up a lot. I found this Nikon FM2 at a thrift store. I think I'm going to keep this thing. I've had it for a couple of years now, but yeah, I mean, I really love this thing. I don't intend to get like another rangefinder to replace this thing. This was the one I was kind of always working up to, and it has. Not only has it met my expectations, it has surpassed my expectations. I expected to love this thing, and I really did. I fell in love with it almost right away because I'm at home with the rangefinders and rangefinder systems and how they feel and how they shoot. So again, that's all just kind of a preference. So anyway, now that we've gone through that, I want to, like I mentioned, I want to show you guys some videos from this trip we took. I want to show you guys some photo samples, and all the samples were again, of course, taken with the M6. This lens is a Voigtlander 35mm Nocton, the f1.4. And before you jump down my throat about having a Voigtlander on an M6, I want to say this. I don't buy into. There are a lot of people who believe that the only reason to get a Leica rangefinder is to shoot Leica glass. I do not subscribe to that. I mean, I'm shooting film. I shoot a lot of black and white, you know, just real quick shots, and I shoot a lot of like cheap color negative. You know, I'm not making like giant 60 inch art prints or whatever. So I have zero compulsion to buy any Leica glass for this thing. This lens, it's tiny, it's a great value. It opens up all the way to f1.4, and it resolves a ton of detail. You know, if somebody were to give me a 35mm Summicron, I wouldn't say no to it, but right now I have no intention of buying it. So if you are like a Leica glass purist or whatever, go ahead and feel free to jump down my throat in the comments. That's cool. I understand. Actually, I don't understand. I don't agree with it, but whatever. You know, it's just opinion. I have no compulsion to buy Leica glass. Like, do I want to own Leica glass one day? Sure, I'd like to be able to shoot it and try it out. I'm sure it's nice, but you know, the Voigtlander lenses, I think you can buy this lens used for like $300 versus a Summicron at the cheap end is like, what, $1,000, $1,200. Yeah. So anyway, all the samples, off my soapbox here, all the samples taken with this camera, this lens. And thank you guys for watching. I've been wanting to talk about this camera for a long time. I'm really excited about it. It makes me excited to go out and shoot with it. I can't wait to put another roll through it. So like I said, I wanted to take you guys along on this trip, show you guys some videos and some samples. So let's go ahead and take a look at that now. And thank you, and I will see you guys next time. Emma. Dito, dito.